For consideration of the Midwest Speedfest 2025, I am presenting an any percent category run of Frogger 2 for the Game Boy Color as one of my speedrun submissions. The any percent category is significantly faster than all gems. The routes are very much set in stone. Everything kind of moves at blistering speeds. If done well. That being said, if mistakes start to happen, then you really start to have, you just got to have backup routes just ready to go at any given time. So, I have to say that this category is a treat when it goes well, and it becomes very unique when you are forced to take alternative plans, and it's a great run, and well, we'll get to talking about it. We'll see how the first level goes. It's very quick. I won't have too much to say for a small amount of it, and then I'll really get down to like explanations as we get further into the run. So let's hop along in 3, 2, 1, go. Okay, we're going to go for a backup route because I was unable to get the other fast route. You may notice that there is another option on level 1 where you can go a little bit further left, and it saves about 2 seconds, but it really hinges on getting to that set of logs faster before they move faster than you. You may notice for very brief moments in time and on very select tiles, a Frogger can walk on water. It's an oversight. The game is trying to kill you, but it just doesn't get the chance to, so you have to like kind of be ready in that way. Bit of a minor death there. Backup worked up all right. I will like to talk a bit about the way that I move with Frogger in this game. Imagine if Frogger's movement is similar to a metronome, and you've got certain rhythms that you like to go with that are fast. So like 1, 2, 3, 4. And we're gonna wait for a backup to show up. Now we just gotta cross our fingers. Okay, we made it. You'll notice that the fastest rhythm we can go at this sort of like human metronome is about triplet patterns. We'll be fine here. So a bit of a rocky start, but we can definitely salvage this by leaps and bounds. So that's a fast method that is safe and only about, like, let's say 2 seconds slower than the fastest known route. These are shadow tiles, and you have to just kind of follow them to the letter, or you'll have to start right at the very beginning. Okay, Okay, we got the fastest method there. Pretty solid. There are a lot of boulder patterns that you have to kind of like be able to get ahead of. This is the old school method on the older world records. Going in between the boulders. It's a little bit safer, but it can be risky at the same time if you have any mistimings. Alright. And this next level here, for World 2... This is generally the hardest level in both any percent and all gems for World 2. Just due to the longer wait time you have to have if you die. And that can be very punishing. Quite like a lot of other levels, especially in World 1, that's also true as well. Where the levels are very punishing and you can be sent really far back and really lose a boatload of time as a result of that. Here's the last set of shadow tiles. Alright, and we're coming up on a strat known as the reverse conveyor belt, where we are going in reverse of the conveyor belts. This is one of the harder ones, but it does set up for our just having rhythm ready here. I walked a little far back than I should have. I had something ready as a backup. We will lose a little bit of time there. But on the general, it's considered a faster method than what is preferable. So I am perfectly aware that I have no lives left to work with. We have to kind of carefully skirt our way here. And we're done with World 2. We're on to ice physics. Oh my. This should be just fast enough, yes. There are a lot of, like, very significant, like, shortcuts you can take across the ice that are way faster than the intended paths. That was one of them. And the next one is coming up real fast right here. And I did end up zinging it, so I'm actually going to just start from scratch here. We're going to get to show it again. And the fish were cooperative this time. The way that the fish move, whatever direction they move, is all dependent on RNG. So whenever you started is... And we got it this time around. Oh, but we missed the beginning path this time. So we're going to lose a little time here, and that's to be expected. Any percent's a pretty crazy category where time losses can be brutal, punishing, and you just kind of have to be ready for all of it. Speaking of levels that are brutal and punishing, level 3-3. I call it YOLO 3 because there were just so many dumb ways to die. The fish will sometimes just snipe you out of sight when you least expect it. Right now they're being cooperative, but we got one last set that could just kill me. And thankfully they did not. Which means I get to show off Kobe! Yeah, alright. Got through Kobe Part 1, no problem. Which brings us to Kobe Part 2. Kobe Part 2! And this is why, if done well, this World 3 Ice Caves is very satisfying to run through. Just because of how, like, smooth and seamless everything feels. Again, if done well. If it's done badly, you feel like an idiot. And now we're going to have to kind of just navigate this as a bit of a backup option. We'll see kind of where the ice lines up here. We have quite a few choices. Oh, we lucked out. Okay. So I'm going to purposefully grab this checkpoint here. And we're just going to kind of just grab those gems a little bit later. Unfortunately, I was just a little too far away on the logs where I could effectively grab them all, so we'll lose a slight amount of time there. It shouldn't be too egregious. The reason we used a game over is because this death warp is really, really important to be able to save a lot of time that we would normally have to spend hopping all the way back, and now we don't have to do that. Done with World 3. And we're now on to the fire pits, and yes, they're definitely much more challenging. Some of the other levels around the similar range of challenging difficulty as World 1. Reason for that is there's a lot of fast cycles that you have to meet, fireballs, bees, and you just need to be ready for a majority of it. Sometimes you can just sort of sit and be a little lackadaisical, but every second counts in this game, so a bit of a safer pattern right here. This level does have a very fast strat that is difficult to hit. And we're not going to get it. You need to be able to make it to this crevice faster than that first fireball, which we did not, but that's alright. And we're now getting to a big kind of clutch point here. This, if you die here, you lose a lot of time here. And that was really, really fast. I did unfortunately pause. Every now and then I'll do that. But that's no big deal. We're handling World 4 strikingly well. Okay, I got a little greedy there, but it's really not that punishing. We just get to the extra area just slightly early. We will lose out on one singular cycle, which I guess is not the worst outcome. Again, sometimes you just like to go really fast, and I sort of split over to the task strat, which saves way more time than what is currently done on the any % run right at the moment. And now we're on one of the most satisfying level movements, and you'll see right here. There's just a million things operating all at once, and you just curtailed past all of it. Managed to sort of just thread the needle without half a thought. For the next 5 to 10 seconds, we get a moment to think, we get to rest, but as soon as this spider passes us, it's go time. So, off we go. Got a bunch of hopping to do, got a million gems to collect. You have to sort of react accordingly to just kind of how things move around. Ooh, and that's a deeply unfortunate place to land, so we are going to have to kind of grab that last gem. We do have a life that we can spend. Prefer not to have to spend it in the first place, but we unfortunately waited a little too long on that last gate. We will not test our luck on this last area. And we're into the last world. That checkpoint is very safe to grab. This world, in any %, is funnily the easiest world in the game. But oftentimes what will get a lot of players, including myself, is just the nerves. Being this far in a marathon or on a world record pace, there's just a lot of like, oh, you might miss input. It's just very easy to get a little bit too much into your own head. So in any %, we kind of just have to trust the process and know that we have the right stuff. Especially because something like this is one of the freest levels, as long as you know what you're doing and you got the right timings. And there really is only 2 levels left to go. But this is the gateway to the last level of the game. For some players, especially those who play casually, this is one of the toughest and most confusing spots to navigate. We'll need a life and a timer here, just in case things go sour. We got 3 chances to get through. And yeah, as soon as you recognize that you can make it through that set of train carts every way at the same time, it gets to be much more breezy. And we got a bit of some crawling up on this last level. As you'll notice, on each of the final world levels for each themed area, you have to collect all the gems in order to rescue the baby frogs, if I didn't mention it already. Gonna wait on the spider here. Ooh, a really strange place to die. Now we're actually at risk of losing this entire run, so we'll have to take it a little easy here. We would normally go for the reverse, but since we made a few too many mistakes here, we're gonna have to just sort of play it a little safe, and we got a bit of a final progression. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. We're gonna kind of just wait it here a little bit carefully. All right. And we are home free. Just have to grab that final gem. And time will be on. Congratulations. And our final time was 15:33. And that is the 80% category of Frogger 2 for the Game Boy Color. As far as a run goes, if this were a marathon run, I'd say it's pretty good. There were a myriad of mistakes, especially in the first world, which is one of the most brutal worlds. So it is expected that sometimes you'll falter, especially with the first level. You have to just be ready or opt for the backup alternate route. The ability to walk on select tiles of frog ponds, which are water traditionally, has made it a little bit easier, but not much easier. And it does complicate cycles a little bit, but other than that, I mean, it's a tough one, and it can get really easy to make just one simple mistake, and then you have to be ready for kind of just how the game operates differently. I was ready with most things. It does start to get a lot more stressful if you make mistakes in certain places. Because while ice caves can be one of the breeziest places, it can also be one of the most stressful places to navigate. If you mess up just like a single time, then alternate routes can make things so much tougher. You know, ice caves is generally very satisfying, but that hinges on everything going perfectly or near perfectly. You got to see a few examples of what it looks like when it's very satisfying. Again, a few small things here or there that could have been just a little bit better, but nothing too egregious. And this is a solid run for what would be in a marathon attempt. And I'm guessing if we were setting estimates for a run like this, it would be around, I'd reckon, around 20 minutes. That would be the benchmark that I would set for something like this. So, all gems has already been showcased before at Midwest Speedfest last year, and I think it would still be cool if people wanted to see what the 80% category looks like, because whereas all gems is a lot more sprawling, there's a lot of other alternate route choices, this game highlights what the run can look like with perfectionism in mind. And even perfectionism in mind on alternate routes too, because this is where you really get to see like how tight the game operates. And I think that's the big appeal of any percent. With all gems, you're really exploring all over the map and globetrotting at a fast speed, but it's a different type of fast. And so, if you're feeling up for another round of Frogger 2 for the Game Boy Color, I hope you consider the any percent category for the marathon. And thank you. I do appreciate it. It is a very quick, blisteringly fast category compared to all gems, which was showcased last year. Any percent, everything is extremely tight. When done well, the movement is very quick. Blink and you'll miss it. It's one of those things where you want to be just kind of moving as quickly as possible, especially in certain worlds where RNG can be a bit of a factor. It's not true in every world, but it is true in at least 2 of the worlds in this game. We'll get there when we get there. And if it's not RNG, it's cycles. And that's true for at least one of the worlds. And by cycles, I mean extended cycles. Because every level has a cycle, but there are extended cycles in the very first world of the 90% category. And that's also true of the All Gems category. Backup strats, you need to be ready with them immediately in a way that you can either A, take risks and reduce the time bleed, or just be ready with a checkpoint in mind in case you know something is going to go wrong, because game overs can be something that will happen in a category like this with how fast things are moving. So I'm going to get the ball rolling here, and I'm hoping I can do this category justice. It's really fun, and I will show you all why I think it's a good time. We'll get started with this run in 3, 2, 1, go. Again, because I wasn't quite going fast enough, there's a backup strat where we go to the far right side of the course. And then this gives me a perfect opportunity to talk about the way that we move around in this game. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3. So you'll notice I was kind of just counting as if I'm a percussionist. Also, for some reason, Frogger can walk on water there. Don't ask. It's very complicated. Okay, we're going to go for a longer path here, as we did end up missing the fast enough pattern. And this will affect the extended cycles in this first world. I'm going to purposely go to this side. We will have to deal with that in these next few areas. Have a few interesting ways to get through there, and my backup did wind up working okay. It will impact how I exit out of this level here, say. I'm going to get back to the internal metronome. The fastest that we can move in this game, while being close enough to the task movement, is in triplets. Given you treat the game like a 4-4 meter. A bit of an unusual mistake. I kind of got a little ahead of myself, and I just hopped a little bit too far ahead. We will make adjustments as needed. Like I said before, triplets are the fastest way to move through here. And we're on the first spider and bat lair. As you may have been able to figure out from the premise of Frogger 2 Swampy's Revenge, Frogger and Lily Frog have to rescue their babies because they got kidnapped by a alligator? Crocodile? You know, I'm not 100% sure exactly which it is, but it's something. Oh, there was definitely stuff going wrong here, but nonetheless I made it through. We're going to purposefully. Okay, oh, I got a bonus life. Okay. So what happened there is I didn't know that I had a bonus life, and so I was trying to spam start to really quickly get through the menu screen here, and I wound up losing a little bit of time as a result of that. Because of how common death is in this category, especially on a marathon level, we like to grab checkpoints in certain places here in order to, you know, just prevent ourselves from falling back way more boulders than we want to. And with the amount of levels that are sometimes in between checkpoints, it's really worth having like those checkpoints just ready to go in case you feel like the run is just a little shaky. And this is one of the tougher levels, not necessarily because of the route that I was taking, but more or less if you die, that's a good 20 seconds of time loss. And I haven't discussed about these low little things right here called shadow tiles. You gotta follow them to the letter, and if you don't, you get sent all the way back to the beginning, which in a run like this can be absolutely devastating. And barring any unusual catastrophes, we had no issue with them. And so we're going to get to a lovely little strat in this bat and spider layer known as the reverse conveyor belt, where we move in reverse. But actually that ain't going to happen because we made a pretty rough mistake. We were going to try it a couple of times and... Okay, now we're in a little trouble. So, because of how many times I died, I actually stand to risk losing the entire run to this section. So we're just going to go the long way, throw away a life, go back down this way, and get the heck out of here. So, barring that rough patch that was the beginning... Oops. Okay, well, because of the way that I botched the end of this level, we're going to have to wait for a while. Ice Caves is a level where we would normally be able to go fairly quickly due to the multitude of, like, shortcuts to get across the ice faster than the main routes. This was one of the other examples. And it's a big time saver. And I got it on the very first try. Handled it like a champ. Ooh, and there's nothing you can do there. If the fish gets you, that's just the end. And that is a great summary of how this world works here. You'll notice I grabbed a life. It is just because of how dangerous this level is. Any fish off screen can hit you, and there is nothing you can do about it sometimes. It's dangerous in both all gems and any percent, and barring that unusual... also, Kobe. Let's see if the fish are cooperative. They are just barely. The fish are a big source of pain in this entire world, as they are functioning on RNG. Kobe Part 2, making some big shots over there. Those two major jumps are why this world is largely very satisfying. Once you get used to kind of how each of the ice levels works, it becomes one of the most satisfying and smooth moving levels of them all. as you can kind of just very quickly sail your way through what seems like very complicated, like, ice barge levels, and make them look like an absolute joke. And now that layer area is not a joke. It's very difficult. I'm on one last life. Hopefully we'll just make it through. This last conveyor cycle should be good enough. There we go. We did. And now we're getting to my favorite place. And by favorite, I mean least favorite. The late game, this area is as tough as the first world. Just due to, like, the many, like, fireball cycles that you have to make it through. These bees that'll just, like, go right for you at the speed of light. But not always at the speed of light, but just when you least want it. Same goes for the fireballs. Let's see, I'm going to go for a zippity-doo-dah, and we got through that. Frogger had to zip very quickly through there. Let's see if I can get this. Nope. Nope, I got too greedy. Too greedy there. So we're going to have to go back. I was going for one of the fastest available cycles in this game. Unfortunately, I got absolutely blown up for it. This bee is going to be a pain. And we just have to be patient and take our time here until we get to this last area. Alright, so now we're getting to another tough level. This, I call it the gateway. We're going to very purposefully take that checkpoint, because a lot can go wrong in these next handful of levels. And we got the fastest available option here. Very good. That is tougher than it looks, and I've managed to nail it in more recent history. Alright. So you might think it'd be in our best interest to go really fast, try to get to that just sort of slab of rock, but we don't have to, because we still have some cycles that we had to wait on, and we'd end up having to wait either way and get around the same time in that particular level. Now, this level here is a very, very satisfying level once you know how it works. Everything looks very complex here. There's a lot of moving conveyor belts, fireballs, but again, you can just kind of follow these arrows, and it just works out well. So now we're on the second to last spider bat lair. This is one where everything is kind of contingent on cycles. It is very easy to mess up here, but you get a moment to think over what you're going to do. Once the spider passes, you just gotta get moving. Can't be messing up. We got a lot of gems to collect. Keeping a bit of some spatial awareness of our lovely little critters, creepy collies, and I got a very nice cycle there. We could have made it into that conveyor belt area, but in the interest of playing it safe, we're keeping the run nicely together. That checkpoint is basically free. There is no reason not to grab it in a marathon run, as it doesn't lose any time. This is the last world. Unlike all the other worlds, it is surprisingly the easiest one in any percent. Unfortunately, when you are going through a marathon run or finishing with a world record pace, the nerves make it one of the, like, most nerve-wracking segments. Even though everything is just basically very basic timings. Especially on this level, which I consider to be one of the easiest levels in all of the Frogger games. Believe it or not, the pace I was going here is nearly identical to the task, with far less steps compared to the task. So this next area coming up here, there's a lot of minecarts moving at varying speeds. It can be a little scary as a casual, but once you understand how each of the placements works, it's pretty consistent every time. Just jump the way I did. And we are on the final level. This is where things can get a little tough. If you're prone to making mistakes like I am. Frogger is a very infamous series for mistakes, especially in runs. It's very easy to just kind of mess up in small ways. And then on top of that, out of all the games that I can think of, this is one of the most punishing ones in that way too. So there we go, that is a reverse spider acquisition. Allows us to save a little bit of time. And again, that rhythm coming in handy in order to... Ooh, so I made a very uncanny mistake where I am losing a good 30 seconds here. I got a little too excited and tried to just go right past the bat, but the bat covered me with the diagonal movement. All right, we're gonna make sure to avoid that this time around, and we're at the very end. This is the last baby frog to rescue. Time is going to be on congratulations. A 14:39, and it's quite pleasantly surprising to see, with the number of mistakes that I made in this run, that I was able to move fairly fast. And it was a pretty solid run. There were a handful of mistakes here and there. And with comparison to the other takes that are in this submission, because I'm going to show a few different runs just to show kind of how mistakes can show up here and there and everywhere. I will have the world record as the last run that I show, just to show what the absolute perfection of it is as of currently. It's not the most perfect, but it's the best that can be shown off, just to show how every single route works. I don't have too much to say about this run. There were, again, a couple of classic mistakes. It seems that reverse conveyor belt cycle can be a tough one to navigate sometimes. I just kind of picked back up on this game again to just sort of review it. It's one of those runs where mistakes will be pretty heavily punished, and you want to be ready to have just backup movement ready on the fly, no matter how many times you mess up. Because those backup routes, if you have them memorized, you're like, oh, I died at this point, then I can go for this type of movement through the area. And that's a big part of what makes this run interesting, is what happens when things don't necessarily go right. This run, when it does go fast, that's another big selling point, is that the routing, in conjunction with the highest, most optimal movement speed on the in-game soundtrack as a metronome, also makes each of these levels interesting, because you can see some levels only require, like, eighth or even quarter notes to get through certain areas at the best possible speed, where others require triplets to conquer. And very rarely will you get to see 16th notes for movement rhythm, but it comes up every now and then if you're feeling really daring at times. But that is the any% category of Frogger 2 for the Game Boy Color. Again, for those who are looking through the submissions for Midwest Speedfest, last year the All Gems category was featured for this game, and if you're feeling like a showcase in Frogger 2 for the Game Boy Color, again, I hope you consider this category. And thank you. Thank you very much. Every level moves at blistering speeds. There's really no point at which Ed lets up, given everything goes well. There are going to be points where the run does not necessarily go according to plan. That is very normal in an 80% run of this type of game, and especially in the Frogger series as a whole. You should expect to see a few mistakes here and there. Some might be more devastating than others, and you'll get to see how backup plans and how adaptation works on the fly. I think that, and given how well things go, if everything goes correctly, the speeds at which things move throughout this game in ways you would at least expect are two of the biggest appeals of the 90% category. So, I'm going to ready things up for that. And we'll start off with this run. Let's get hopping along in 3, 2, 1, go. Ooh, that's our first death on this level. I'm going to start with a new take, actually. I'm going to start with a new take. So, we're going to start over that take right away. I would just like to start on something that is relatively good, and we'll see if this works. So, for the benefit of myself, this recorded take starts 1 hour, 19 minutes, and 30 seconds into the recording. For consideration of Midwest Speedfest 2025, I am presenting the any percent category of Frogger 2 for the Game Boy Color. The any percent category of this game is a blisteringly fast category as compared to the sprawling, more exploratory All Gyms category, which was showcased at Midwest Speedfest last year. In this category, you'll get to see just how well everything goes, if it goes right, and given how fast things work, especially in very unique ways on certain levels, and in patterns and lines that you would least expect on certain levels. And then you'll also get to see what happens when we are forced to adapt on the fly. So that should be pretty fun. And I'm not going to waste too much time. We'll get this rodeo going. Let's hop along in 3, 2, 1, go. And again, just because I'm not moving fast enough, I'm going to go for the slight backup strats. Because of how quickly you have to move in the first level, you have to just sometimes be ready to sacrifice a few seconds. Especially on the first level where death is very devastating. It really sets the cycles off big time. And this is a great time to talk about the way that we move. Also, that tile, for some reason, Frogger can walk on water there. That was a pretty tight corridor entry. We got some slip sliding away. I wasn't quite confident enough to make it through all the turtles there. We will just opt for a more backup safe pattern, which works pretty alright. So before I got sidetracked by a couple of other things that were happening in previous levels, one of the big tenets of this game is the soundtrack. You'll notice it's exactly the same for every single level, which is very important. Very nice cycles for that level, especially considering the mistakes that were made. This is a great example of the fastest metronomic pattern that we can go in the game that is still fairly close to matching the task. And you can see it gets us pretty far. It allows us to move nearly as fast as the task itself, with some minor difference. We got some shadow tiles to navigate. We have to follow them to the letter, otherwise be sent to the very beginning of those areas. And that was handled very nicely. That is a perfect example of when the patterns go well. And we're in. We're going to go into one of the toughest levels to navigate if there is a death, so we do not want to go for the backup patterns at all costs. And that worked out just fine. And that round of shadow tiles went just fine. We're getting to a strat called the reverse conveyor. You'll see very quickly why. We have to travel in reverse. And I got the short end of the stick there. We will just have to deal with the death for what it's worth. And we'll just go the slow way. What it's supposed to do is it does save a heap of time in this particular section, as you're able to just kind of circumvent some of the troubles that are faced in this particular area. But this is fine too. And now we're getting to ice physics. Woo, how cool is that? What is cool about this world is if you get the opportunity for everything to cooperate, you can go for these really cool shortcut lines across the ice flows. This is another example of such. Same goes for the first level. Those lines are very satisfying once you learn how to hit them. But if you make a mistake, then you're really in trouble and the time sink becomes big. Speaking of places where time can just be lost in gobs, this is YOLO level 3, where you can kind of pedal to the metal, but then also just bear in mind the fish are always out for you. They're out for blood. They will kill you at any opportunity that they have. And this is all dependent on this lovely, also terrible thing called RNG. Depending on how fast you're going through the run, the fish will give you certain patterns. You can predict some of them, but then there are other places like this level where you cannot foresee some of the patterns, and you are taking a bit of a leap of faith, per se. So one death here is actually pretty good. So let's see how Kobe goes. We were blessed with a good shot into the basketball hoop. And we're going for Kobe Part 2. Went just as well as Kobe Part 1. And those sort of lines that we take here are what makes this game so much fun. Once you know, get used to each of the levels, the ice caves becomes one of the most fun levels to navigate through. And this is the third spider bat layer. There are two big parts of this. One of them is just a lot of triplet hopping. to get to this area as quickly as possible in the interest of being able to get to this bat. We purposefully throw one life away here in order to catch this conveyor belt pattern in time, as opposed to having to navigate around the other way. We are able to kind of save a good amount of time not having to travel back in the opposite direction. We're going to just play it safe here, and did fairly well. And the Fire Caves is a mix of the challenge and precision from World 1 with just the adage of how far in we are to it. There are plenty of fast cycles that you can take, but this game has also got a lot of alternate cycles that you can go for here. Especially with these last few, like, fireball cycles that we have to take here. And I decided to just try to swiftly hop along and just hope for the best. You got the fastest cycle available. That was awesome. I wanted to be able to show that off in at least one or two of my submission takes. Now we're at one of the most challenging levels in the game because of how precise just a few key inputs are here. And I'm just going to play it a bit safe here, just so I don't have to start right at the very beginning of the level. If you lose any life there, you're losing anywhere between 20 and like 20 seconds and a whole minute. And in a marathon run, you just don't want to risk it. You might think that by missing that one set of boulder and slabs there, that I was losing time, but no matter how quickly you move through that area, you'll end up getting the general same cycle for the most part. There is a task that is way faster and requires a very complex movement through a certain set of fireballs. I've only ever pulled it off once. It's not safe for a marathon run, nor is it safe for a current world record run either, so you won't get to see it. But you will get to see something satisfying right here. There's a lot of things just kind of moving about, and we just weave our way through everything without half a thought. That is another, you know, level movement that is very satisfying. It looks very smooth once you get, like, really, really good at moving around. This is one of the small points in the time where you get about 3 to 5 seconds of rest. Once this spider is past us, it's go time. Got a lot of gems to collect, making just micro changes here. Depending on where the spiders and the bats are, sometimes you do not get that luxury. In fact, we are going to be faced with a tough scenario of having to just let go of the possibility of being able to go through the normal way. So we actually have to go through in the opposite direction. So normally we would just take a death warp, but we are on one life and we want to be able to preserve it as much as possible without getting a game over here. So, bit of a time loss, but nothing too terrible. Again, it is moments there where you have to be aware of how many lives you have. Otherwise, you set yourself back like a minute, 2 minutes sometimes, and 3 minutes in the worst cases. And that is why just being conscious of how many lives you've got is a big part of what allows you to handle a marathon run really, really well. And now we're at the mines, a series of levels that in any percent is really actually very easy for the first 3. Just given that it's all just kind of just wait for the timing. Now, if that was all I had to say, then I would just shut my mouth, but the biggest X factor with this is that while these movements are easy in practice, in an actual run, you've got nerves of finishing a run on world record pace, sometimes finishing a run in a marathon, and so it can be made more challenging knowing what's at stake. Especially this level, where the minecart patterns can be a little intimidating. This is much more so the case for casuals who don't necessarily know what they're doing. But once you get used to the fastest and most accessible pattern, it becomes a breeze. So we're on the very last level of the game. I am aware that I've got just 3 chances to get this right. I probably should have grabbed the checkpoint. This might come back to bite me later down the line. So I'm actually going to pop back in the opposite direction. Just preserve an extra life in case things do go wrong, because they can and they will go wrong. This is one example of where things could go wrong. This reverse spider acquisition. You got to be fast enough to get the timing on those. I'm counting sort of in my head for that area. I'm going to play it a little bit safe here. And then we'll have one more loop. And time is going to be when we get to the congratulations screen. And that was a pretty good run. If this were a marathon run, I'd say it's pretty good. Even with the mistakes in here, you got to see the essentials of what makes the any % run exciting, and the backups that also make it exciting when there's a lot on the line. And I pulled through quite well. 13:34, well under the sub 15 and the sub 14. Again, this is a much better example of when the run goes fairly right. There is the other extreme side where a lot of mistakes can happen, and then you run through quite a number of game overs. And it really illustrates that about 20 minutes for the estimate gives a generous amount of time in case everything goes downhill on one specific world, which is always a possibility. The other 2 takes in here would perfectly illustrate that. And just being able to feel out when you need to just kind of game over it to reset your optimal route patterns can be a big saving grace in a marathon run. Knowing when you have to apply backups is good, but knowing when you can switch things back to regular route is even more important in any %, especially because it's available fairly frequently in any %. In all gems, sometimes you get a little bit in your head and you kind of forget how things work, and then you just improv stuff in the moment. But in this category, you got the opportunity to get back to the usual pathway, especially after stumbling in a few other places, and that can keep the run going nicely. And that much makes the add any % category really cool to watch in a marathon, is that you get to see that adaptation really fly into the picture in several different ways. And I think that's a big part of why the any % category would be cool to show off at Midwest Speedfest 2025. For this game, in the past, the All Gems category showed at last year's Midwest Speedfest. And if the folks are feeling like second round of this game, the any % category would be the other side of how speedrunning works in this game. And I would certainly encourage it if people are feeling up to it. So for the folks at Midwest Speedfest, I hope you consider it. I'll have a world record run to show after this particular take. Just to show what happens when everything that's planned out goes right. Just to show everything that could be shown off in the speedrun that I didn't get the chance to showcase in any of these takes. I thank you for your time.